For nearly 2 decades, we've watched Elon Musk slowly become the P.T. Barnum of the tech world. He makes promises of full self-driving next year for 12 consecutive years, followed by the admission previous generation Teslas would never actually be capable of full self-driving. Millions of robotaxis would be in service by 2020, but only 60 are actually in use as of this recording in 2026. AI data centers in space, personal robots in everybody's home, interplanetary colonization, and an IPO that valued his space/AI/social media/data center company at nearly $2 trillion after losing $5 billion the year before. Despite all the hype and non-existent follow-through, he's been wildly and undeniably successful as an entrepreneur, founder, and shareholder. But last week, his hallucinatory effort to pump SpaceX with promises and half-truths to support an outrageous share price started to falter in a way we've never seen before. Musk has always been a vibe trade. The fans and true believers fawn over every wild prediction and conveniently ignore his often repugnant behavior and objectively mediocre performance as a CEO, all in some inexplicable endeavor to bask in his manufactured aura. But something's changed now, and the once impenetrable support he and his companies have enjoyed is starting to evaporate. The Bears are assembling at the fence line, and the Bulls are starting to wander off the pasture. For the last 2 decades, it was a fool's errand to bet against Elon, but I would argue he's now made 3 critical mistakes that could take down his entire empire. Let me start by placating the stands that are about to run to the comments without actually watching this whole video. Elon was briefly a trillionaire and is still the richest man in the world. Musketeers will say I'm jealous that I could never be that successful and I'm just a hater. That's adorable. The SpaceX IPO did raise billions in capital for the company, and the share price could absolutely rebound. It's happened before, and it could certainly happen again. Tesla did just have its second best quarter in its history, despite shutting down production on 2 of its current models. Elon fans will conveniently ignore that those results were largely due to heavily discounted sales to move an aging model lineup and Tesla's illiquid stake in SpaceX, which they claimed was worth 69% of Tesla's $1.14 billion GAAP net income for the quarter. But the market didn't. Tesla recently traded below $300 and set a new 52-week low. In January of this year, I predicted Tesla would lose 80% of its value within the next 2 years. It was a bold, if not foolish, prediction, and I was summarily and justifiably roasted in the comments for it. Fast forward to August, and the stock is down 26% year to date, and I have roughly 18 months of runway left on my prediction. If things keep going this way, I'm going to take multiple obnoxious victory laps. And finally, Elon is our Mecha Lex Luthor. He's strategic, conniving, stubborn, smart, and incredibly persuasive. It also helps that he's ludicrously wealthy and could almost single-handedly pump enough cash into the next 4 election cycles of the House, Senate, and presidency to install whatever government he chooses. Rage baiting aside, I've been paying painfully close attention to Elon and his conquest this year, and I've landed on 3 possibly unrecoverable mistakes he's made that could collapse his entire empire. First, the SpaceX IPO was a farce. Enabled by a frothy market, nearly 24 sycophantic investment banks vying for a piece of the underwriting fees and the opportunity to secure green shoe shares, because no one told Elon, no, a company losing billions despite its biggest launch customer being itself, saddled with a failing social media platform and a nearly defunct AI company, is not worth $2 trillion. Then the board of the NASDAQ said, hold my beer, waiving the minimum float requirements and allowing the unproven stock to be fast-tracked into the NASDAQ 100, mainlining SpaceX into millions of retirement accounts owned by unsuspecting and potentially unwilling investors, bought for a reported average price of $160 per share. Initially, that worked, as the company's implied value soared past $2 trillion, if only briefly. As of this recording, SpaceX is currently trying to claw its way back from a low of $104 last week. The amount of hype and irrational investor support Musk needs to manufacture to keep 2 wildly overvalued public companies overvalued seems overwhelming, creating a durable distortion field around Tesla to help it become the most valuable car company in the world, despite producing less than 4% of the same number of cars as Toyota. Took nearly 10 years, and now that stock is off too. You know, one of the best ways to support small YouTube channels like mine is to subscribe. If you like the content and you'd like to see more of it, consider subscribing. Back to the episode. The second critical mistake he made was he went political. He raged into the culture wars of the 2020s, decrying everything from equal treatment for the LGBTQ community to DEI efforts. He's publicly supported far-right political campaigns in Europe and regularly invents facts regarding hundreds of billions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse in entitlement programs like Social Security and Medicare. And this has had a negative effect on his associated brands. According to reporting by the New York Times, NPR, and others, Tesla trade-ins surged in 2024 and 2025 as owners didn't want to be associated with Elon's car company or be harassed while driving a Tesla, so they were, and I quote, being called a Nazi in a Kroger parking lot. Yale University published a research paper that concluded, quote, without the Musk partisan effect, Tesla sales between October 2022 and April 2025 would have been 67 to 83% higher, equivalent to 1 to 1.26 million more vehicles. Musk's partisan activities also increased the sales of other automakers' electric and hybrid vehicles 17 to 22%, because of substitution. The research went on to reveal that until Elon started using Twitter as his own personal bully pulpit, Democratic voters specifically were increasingly buying Teslas. After he weaponized Twitter, that turned sharply, and those lost customers were not fully replaced by buyers that identified as Republicans or right-leaning. In short, Tesla sales went down and competitor sales went up because Musk went political. Most CEOs avoid political speech like a fungus because they fear this exact scenario playing out. In today's environments, taking a stance, especially a controversial one, can mean alienating half or more buyers in a market. But those who follow Elon closely will posit he does this to distract the media, shareholders, and the public from inconvenient disclosures or bad news. In August of 2018, he posted the famous funding secured tweet claiming he had the funding to take Tesla private. At the time, Tesla was facing production problems and heavy short interest. Musk's tweet seized attention, rallied the stock briefly, but ultimately triggered SEC action when the claim proved misleading. The art of the distraction is only one of his strategies. He understands that aligning with the current administration or party in power can be extremely lucrative. According to the Washington Post, Musk's companies have received at least $38 billion in government contracts, loans, subsidies, and tax credits, and the true total is probably higher. The Congressional Budget Office reports Elon's affiliated companies received $6.8 billion in contracts in 2024 alone. So when his new worldview seems to overlap significantly, if not completely, with the current administration, that's not coincidental. Lastly, consolidation rarely expands value. Let's take Amazon, for example. Amazon has multiple business units, but the two biggest are the Amazon retail business itself and Amazon Web Services, also known as AWS. Most everyone already has an unhealthy parasocial relationship with the Amazon app, but in case you've been living under a rock, AWS is the largest cloud computing provider in the world with roughly 29% of the total market. While retail sales are still the biggest business unit at Amazon, AWS generated about $130 billion in revenue last year, which produces a profit margin in the mid-30% range, while retail generates low single digits. So translated into profits, Amazon makes about $50 billion in profit from AWS and around $28 billion for the retail business, which means AWS drives more profit than anything else at Amazon. Now imagine Amazon decided to spin off AWS into a separate company. Given AWS's revenue, the new company spin-out would still be somewhere in the 15th to 24th largest company listed in the Fortune 500. That same range would also apply to the retail company without AWS. Now that would take Amazon out of the top echelon of the Fortune 500, but would give the now individual share prices more headroom to increase in value. It would also allow them to operate independently from one another, providing flexibility in management and strategy and expand investor interest. I would argue the only reason they haven't spun this company out is Jeff Bezos' ego, not wanting to give up the crown of having a $3 trillion market cap. And I'm not alone. Multiple analysts, including Mark Loeb, Mark May, and Laura Martin, also believe Amazon should spin out AWS. And they believe this because historically this has worked incredibly well. As companies spin outs, create their own enterprise value, increase share prices, and in turn, shareholder value. While this is no guarantee of future success, it does allow the market to fairly and often more favorably value a company. Take, for example, the spinouts of 3Com and Palm, Ferrari and Fiat, GE Healthcare and GE Aerospace from GE, Philip Morris from Altria. And ironically, one of the best examples of a successful spinout comes from Elon's own history, PayPal and eBay. But Elon is doing the exact opposite. In 2022, Elon bought Twitter for $44 billion. Musk then formally launched XAI in 2023. He then had XAI buy X, formerly known as Twitter, for $45 billion if you include about $12 billion in debt. Because Elon has voting control over both and both were privately held companies, he basically set the price and terms himself. Interesting side note, Elon said that deal valued XAI at $80 billion, despite it generating about $100 million compared to X that generated somewhere around $2.5 billion. But he wasn't done consolidating. In 2026, using a control provision Elon and his lawyers manufactured, he forced SpaceX to buy XAI, and because of the previous merger, X as well. So now you have one company where three used to exist. And in this specific case, I'll argue against my own thesis. This was a smart move. X had been losing users, advertiser support, and market share for years. XAI was losing a rumored $1 billion a month while gaining almost no traction, and an eventual admission from Musk, quote, XAI was not built right first time around, so is being rebuilt from the foundations up, end quote. By hiding two failing companies inside SpaceX, which was about to go public, and promoting the benefits of shared resources, technology, and innovation the combined companies would produce, he made chicken salad out of chicken shit. But that's not the consolidation to worry about if you're a shareholder. It's rumored Musk is laying the groundwork to merge Tesla and SpaceX, which is a far hairier and more complicated proposition. It's also likely to destroy shareholder value. Let me break down my thinking. First, Tesla is, or at least can be, a profitable company. The diminished fan base is still very loyal to the brand and has made peace with driving a car tied to Elon Musk and all of the potential baggage that comes with that. It's still the world's most valuable car company, even if that's not tied to any rational analysis of the company's fundamentals. Cathie Wood still buys every dip in the stock price, and when sales are off, you can just sell more Cybertrucks to SpaceX. The jury is out on if SpaceX can turn the corner and become a valuable company. The lockups are going to start expiring. The market may get flooded with supply over the next 12 months, and that may put even more pressure on the SpaceX share price. Second, it just doesn't seem necessary. The two companies can share tech, IP, and even engineering talent as needed. They already do that to some degree, so there's no need to merge the company for those reasons. Third, if Musk combines the companies, it's likely the total market cap of that company would be significantly lower than if they existed and traded separately. It would also invite more scrutiny of each individual product line as investors and analysts try to determine contribution margins and performance of each business unit. If XAI continues to stink up the balance sheet, how will that reflect on Tesla? If Tesla misses quarterly targets, what does that do to Starlink? If saddling SpaceX with X and XAI was an effort to hide those failures, why bring Tesla down with the rest of them if and when it all goes south? As an entrepreneur myself, I can respect the burn the ships mentality, but that's not really what's happening here. For nearly 20 years, we've watched Elon Musk pull off some amazing feats. Chief among them is repeatedly getting private and public investors to back him. The common critique of Musk is that he's always pitching one product to sell today, the next product on the horizon, and a far-fetched future moonshot, keeping supporters and critics alike enthralled, if not a bit hoodwinked. The Elon trade has always been rooted in vibes, an eager audience that really wants to believe him when he says he will colonize Mars, or build data centers in space, or even engineer robotaxis that work without a nanny in the passenger seat with their hand hovering over a kill switch, just in case. But he's made some flawed decisions lately, some of which may end up being unrecoverable. But I don't expect you to take my prediction at face value. The same guy who put himself at the center of his own empire is starting to act and sound a little less sure of himself and a little more desperate. He sacrificed half the Tesla fan base for government contracts and subsidies. He's alienated fund managers forced to buy SpaceX stock. He's increasingly hyperbolic and combative with analysts. And most importantly, he's running out of moves to make. He's already sold his social media company to himself, offloaded his AI company that no one used to SpaceX investors, and stopped production on 40% of Tesla's car models to chase the belief he can get millions of people to buy useless robots as a futile signal of wealth. Sure, Tesla could rally. He could get more bootlicking investment bankers to peg SpaceX's target price at $800 or more with strong buy recommendations, and he even might get some Optimus robots to dance on cue or pretend to fold some laundry, all of which is just enough to keep the charade going, but I doubt it. This is not what healthy, growing companies do, and it's certainly not the strategy a mature, accomplished, and capable CEO would execute either. Betting against Elon Musk has been a losing proposition for 20 years. Maybe it still is. But for the first time, fundamentals in sentiment are eroding faster than Elon can restore confidence in his genius. He stayed at least one step ahead of the bears for 2 decades, but routinely leveraged his future against the present. And that leverage may prove too much to overcome. That's it for this episode. As always, like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.